Stand by, guys.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the special edition of the Don Lemon Show here on Sunday. We're covering the breaking news, the outrage, and the protests that are erupting over another ICE murder, killing in the streets in broad daylight in Minnesota. And I am joined by a whole team of professionals here, and I'll give them in order as you see them on the screen. Jolly is here, an activist. Nick Valencia, an independent former colleague of mine at CNN and now an independent reporter, an independent journalist. Mark O'Mara is a renowned criminal defense attorney. And you can't hear me? Mark O'Mara can't hear. And then Monique Presley, a renowned attorney and legal mind. And also Michael Fanone joins us, former police officer and a survivor, I think it's fair to say, Michael, of January 6th. Fair to say. Can you hear me, Michael?
Yeah, I got you.
I can hear you.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. That's fair to say, Don.
Yeah, let's just say, Mark O'Mara, can you hear? Okay, we'll get Mark O'Mara up. So I just want to tell you guys what has been going on. There have been protests still happening on the streets there in Minnesota. And there was, did you guys see this, Jolly, this temporary restraining order that they have? Let me just make sure I get Nick in here. There's a temporary restraining order that they have for,
in
can you guys hear?
miles. Use the
Don, if you could hear me, I'm going to get out of the room and come back in because I can't hear you. I'll be right back.
Okay. Got it. Jolly, I'm doing this without producers, guys. So anyways, Jolly, did you see the temporary restraining order? And
I did not. No, Don. I have not seen it.
Yeah. I'll put it up on the screen, add it to the stage for you so you guys can see it. This is a temporary restraining order. And it is from the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension and Hennepin County Attorney's Office. It is to Kristi Noem, who is obviously the U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security. John Condon, in his official capacity as Acting Executive Associate Director of Homeland Security Investigations. U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Todd Lyons. Acting Director of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Marcos Charles. Official capacity as Acting Executive. And then it goes on. Rodney Scott is in there. There's also mentioned in there, which is Greg Bovino is mentioned. And also David Easterwood, who is the pastor at the church. I think it's City's Church is the name. His official capacity is Acting Director of the St. Paul Field Office, U.S. Immigration. So those are the defendants in this case. And so they sent a temporary restraining order that would prohibit them. It enjoins them from, as they say in the complaint, defendants together with their employees, agents, and anyone acting in concert with them are enjoined from destroying or altering evidence related to the fatal shooting involving federal officers that took place in and around the 26th Street and Nicollet Avenue in Minneapolis on January 24th, 2026, including but not limited to evidence that defendants and those working on their behalf removed from the scene and/or evidence that defendants have taken into their exclusive custody. Monique, talk to us. What does that mean? What is this all about?
So it is part of the chain of events that unfortunately has been happening since yesterday, where numerous efforts were made by state and local law enforcement from different branches to be able to access the scene, to secure evidence, to make the scene safe for a productive investigation. And they were denied repeatedly. I don't know if you guys have seen the, I guess it was the BCA officer who was, and he wasn't just an officer, he was like a head of the division, who was saying that they only went and got a warrant after they were denied access to the scene initially. And then after they got the warrant, they were still denied access. And so now they are having to seek these measures to restrain the federal government from tainting the scene, from destroying evidence that it has gained. And that would include, I don't know how many people were snatched up off the streets, quite literally, who were witnesses yesterday and had to hide in order to get their eyewitness accounts and their videos posted and to post affidavits. They're doing all kinds of measures that normally would not be necessary just in order to preserve evidence. So this step was necessary because we are seeing a federal government that is actively seeking to taint, to destroy, to dilute, to pollute evidence scenes rather than do what any trained officer, and Mike is on here and can testify to what's supposed to be happening. They have routinely been doing the opposite at all of these different scenes.
What is that protocol, Michael?
Yeah, so I watched that press conference yesterday, and it was the head of the criminal investigations, their force investigation team, who was participating in the interview, and he said that he was denied access in shootings involving law enforcement officers. In my experience, and I've never heard of a deviation from this. It is the state, local, or municipal law enforcement agency that takes the lead in those investigations. So, for instance, in Minnesota, it would have been the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, their force investigation team that investigates uses of force by law enforcement, whether it's federal law enforcement officers, whether it's state, local law enforcement officers. And again, Don, we talked about this yesterday. It is, you never would have the agency involved in the use of force conduct their own use of force investigation. I mean, it's as simple as if, you know, Jolly or myself went out and shot somebody and then said, "Hey, everybody, don't worry, Jolly and I got this. We're going to handle the investigation ourselves." Mm-hmm. And then to hear them have to go and take, you know, the unprecedented step of securing a search warrant for a scene that is held by a federal law or a fellow law enforcement agency. I mean, we are now in full-on bizarro land. And then that, you know, coupled with the statements we've heard from the administration and the statements we've heard from these agencies. I mean, I think every major newspaper in America has led with a headline that, you know, to paraphrase, the video does not match the statements that are coming from these agencies.
You're muted, Don.
That is, let me show you some of the video that we have been discussing here. But first, I want to bring in now my friend Tara Setmeyer, who is also a veteran in all of this and is a political strategist, consultant. And should I call you a journalist? Can I call you that? Former Republican? No. Not that.
I don't think I'm a journalist. No, because I'm under no obligation to tell both sides of the story here. I have or both sides of a lie. Not you, Don, but a lot of people in the mainstream media do that, and I don't think that that's journalism anymore. But no, I would say that I'm a democracy defender. I'm an advocate. You know, my organization, the Seneca Project, is a award-winning storytelling content organization. And I worked on Capitol Hill for years. And as a Republican, many years, I mean, I've quit the party, but Don, you and I became friends and got to know each other because you gave me my opportunity on cable news during the Black Lives Matter time when I was defending and advocating on behalf of law enforcement, much to the chagrin of a lot of my brothers and sisters on the left who were very upset with me because I wasn't out there jumping on board with some of the things that they were accusing law enforcement of doing back then. And I, coming from a law enforcement family, married to a law enforcement officer, I had a different perspective. And I spent years advocating on behalf of law enforcement. And I've got to tell you that what is going on right now, and Michael Fanone knows this because I've been there for those guys and I've stood up for them. I've shed tears over what's happened to the Capitol police officers and the Metro PD officers who defended January 6th. But I got to tell you right now that what is going on in this country is absolutely dishonors the badge, dishonors law enforcement, the ones who are good and honorable people. And this is fascism flat out. And I am livid, beside myself, and heartbroken over what we're seeing happening in the streets of this country. So, you know, it's there's a lot here that is just hard to fathom. So thank you for including me, Don.
Thank you. And I want to bring in now Nick Valencia. Nick Valencia is on the scene. And Nick, if you can give us a horizontal instead of the vertical that you have, that would be great. But Nick, take us to the scene. You're at the scene of yesterday's shooting, if I'm not mistaken. And what are you seeing there?
Yeah, we're here, and it is a very somber scene right now. It's turned in very much so a vigil. And if you can hear me, I'm going to talk a little low here so as not to interrupt the crowd. I'll pan up here, and you see this crowd has really grown in size over the course of the last couple of hours. I was out here earlier this morning, and there was just a few people reflecting, saying the name of Alex Pretty, and now you have a crowd that has really grown in size. These were the same streets that were quite active yesterday, clashes between demonstrators and police, and the amount of law enforcement agencies that were out here, it was almost like who wasn't out here. And part of what frustrated people is that they saw local and state police appear to be protecting those feds that they were directing the ire at. I'm being asked to leave here because interrupting the memorial. So I'll just cross the street as I walk and talk. But we'll get to the other side here. And you see behind me the crowd that's formed. The police officers are there, sort of protecting the people now who have come to reflect. This community is traumatized, and you see in their eyes, just hours before, I guess the day before, Alex Pretty was killed. I was at the elementary school, Valley View Elementary, where 5-year-old Liam Bonejo Ramos was taken. That school in Columbia Heights, 19, 20 families have been impacted. Just days before 5-year-old Liam was taken, a photo that galvanized a lot of people that seemed not to care. You had Renee Goods killing just before that. And then, just as the community is sort of coming to terms with, where is Liam? Oh, he was transferred to the Dilley Detention Center. Where is his father? They're really, transferring people out of here very quickly. They wake up on Saturday morning to news of the killing of yet another one of their neighbors. And it was interesting this morning, Don, because I had coffee with a Second Amendment supporter. You often ask yourselves, and I think we often ask ourselves, where's the line for people?
Oh, I think we lost Nick. Sorry about that. We lost Nick Valencia. We'll get back to our guests. Obviously, some technical issues there. So I want to put up some video for everyone to see, and especially our legal minds here and police officer. And I don't know if Marco Mera is with us. We had Marco Mera, but he's on a train in the services body. So I'm going to play this, everyone, as we work to get Nick back. Let's see if we have. There he is. Nick, yeah. Nick, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I was picking up. We're talking about being with a Second Amendment supporter this morning, and we often ask ourselves, where's the line for people?
You're over the lens, Nick. By the way.
We often ask our people, say, okay, there we go. Where's the line for people? We suffer from a disease of individualism in this country, and it's almost as if you're not directly impacted by it, you don't care. And it's so clear and evident to this community that we just celebrated MLK Jr.'s federal holiday. A threat to justice anywhere, an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And this community, sure, when I got here, part of what I wanted to show was that these kinds of things won't happen all across the community, but the ripples of the trauma that the residents have faced, it's touched everyone in this community. And, that Second Amendment supporter was saying this morning, I don't know if my Republican peers, coworkers are going to go into the ballot box and change their vote from an R to a D. I just know, though, that these individuals who are reluctant and unwilling to accept what was happening are now starting to process this in a different way. And they're realizing that the person that they voted for is the boot that's kicking them. We're out here on the streets, and we've been out here for 7 months. Where are all the don't tread on people? Where are all the small government people? Where are the headlines that in any other country, this would be secret police target ethnic minorities? That's plain and simple. I was coming in here. I hated the fact that I felt like I was part of the story coming in here simply by being a brown man. I was terrified to come in here driving around by myself because it seemed effectively this was a police state. You have the largest federal immigration operation in the history of America. Just weeks after a so-called supposed independent journalist, Nick Shirley, was here, to promote propaganda for the administration. And they celebrated that report as real journalism, when in reality, it was just more propaganda for the administration and a reason for them to come in here and be heavy-handed. And what residents here are telling me is that they believe that the president wants to incite the Insurrection Act, wants to bring in the military. Yesterday, during those demonstrations afterwards, when the demonstrators took over this area, there was a C-130 that flew overhead. So it's like, are they being pushed here to react? The embers were here already with the death of George Floyd, Philando Castillo, and those embers have been stoked by the ire of Trump, the persecution of people of color, the Somali community being disproportionately targeted after Latinos have been targeted. You're seeing regular Americans that are being told now that they have to prepare to, give their citizenship. This is not a democracy, and people are realizing that now. It used to sound poetic or dramatic to say, hey, we're dealing with fascism. It's not. There's so many concrete examples of it happening right now. And yesterday was just another one here. Don?
And everyone who's watching, and this is from yesterday that we did not get to see yesterday. It's a new angle, at least when we were on the air. So I want everyone to watch. This is very important. Here we go. Stand by.
Go. What the fuck is wrong with you? The fuck, people? The fuck is wrong with you? Honestly. What did you just do? What the fuck did you just do? What the fuck? What the fuck? Oh my god! 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 The fuck did you just do? The fuck did you just do? Yes! Liz, somebody call the ambulance! Somebody call the ambulance! Somebody needs to call the ambulance! Somebody call 911! I can't believe they just did that! Holy shit! Holy shit! Just, hey, come on! Come on! Oh my god, you fucking people, man! You're fucking killing us! Why would you do that? Oh my god! Oh my god! I can't believe I'm seeing this! I can't believe I'm seeing this! Come on, come on, come on, come here, come on! Come here.
Okay.
It is.
Also? No, I'm okay. I'm just showing the community how beautiful y'all are. Hey, thank you.
Appreciate you being out here.
Right. Yeah.
Who wants to go first? Michael?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. I mean, that's an important video. It does give you the full context of what took place in the moments before, during, and after the decedent was shot by law enforcement. And it counters the narrative that's being put out by people like Greg Bavino and Kristi Noem and other administration officials when it comes to the victim in this case's actions. He was not there, as they have said, to inflict maximum carnage on law enforcement officers. It's clear that he is filming law enforcement activities, as is his legal right. It's clear that he does not engage with the ICE agents. He intervenes to render aid to an individual, to a woman who had been shoved to the ground by ICE agents. At that point, he gets into what appears, well, the agents make contact with him, pepper spray him. Then there's a physical confrontation that involves more agents. And I think this is important. This is, where the other video that was featured in both the New York Times reporting and the Washington Post
Man, and they keep pushing people,
Sorry, Michael.
clearly shows the agent in what appears to be a gray jacket
pushing people.
carrying
They're doing too much, man, and they keep pushing people,
be the same
I'm trying to
firearm
turn the volume down on that. Sorry, go ahead.
photographed that was in the victim's lawful possession. This was he had a lawful permit to carry a firearm. I heard Kash Patel make a statement on Fox News that it is unlawful to carry a firearm in a protest zone. I don't see this as a protest zone, and also that is not the law. Kash Patel just made that shit the fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
And so here you have a U.S. citizen, legal resident, lawfully carrying a firearm, whose only crime was intervening on behalf of a woman who was being physically assaulted by masked, armed agents, and he lost his life. I understand these situations. I've been in them many, many, many times. I have dealt with countless armed suspects. We talked about it yesterday, Don. I've never used deadly force to subdue an individual, even when they were armed during the encounter. This was absolutely chaotic. It goes against all of my law enforcement training, and it goes against the very principles of law enforcement, which is to protect and to serve.
Mm-hmm.
This agency has become a agency that uses aggression, fear, physical violence to accomplish its ends.
As our legal person on the panel here on the show, Monique, when you see that video, what do you think?
Well, first of all, when I see it, I can't help but be a human who also is a legal person, and it's horrific. It doesn't matter how many times you watch it, but I think that I have a great deal in common with Tara and with Mike, and that for 11 years of my life, I defended a municipality, and that was the DC Metropolitan Police Department. And in civil litigation cases, in police misconduct cases, in wrongful death cases. And I never had to deal with a scene, as Mike just said, as chaotic as what you just saw, as so obviously lacking in basic training about how to restrain, if you want to call him a suspect, that's what that was to them, how to restrain a suspect, how to use the tools available to you, how to work in concert with 6 people and 1 man. It shouldn't have happened in the first place. All of the escalation was on them.
Correct.
Where they should have been de-escalating every ratcheting up, every escalating, everything that led to them getting to the point where they have him on the ground. All of that was them. But even with that, they're not even trained to do the things that you aren't supposed to do anymore.
Right.
Like they didn't even seem to know how to do what we would call a hog tie. They didn't even seem to know how to pen and work in concert in order to restrain. and to keep somebody prone. They obviously were not concerned, all of them, about searching for a weapon because he was being whipped.
Yeah, this was a barroom brawl with guns.
Correct.
He was being beaten, except not a brawl because it's this one man.
Yeah.
Right? So it's more like a gang beating type attack against him, and by thugs, by goons who have no idea what they're doing. And even if you look back at where it really started, the way that so-called agent pushed that woman,
Yep.
there's no procedure that trains you to do something like that. That's just assault. Plain and simple. That's assault. Whether that person was immigrant or not, papered or not, it doesn't matter. It's obvious that emotions were ruling the day. She didn't touch him, so perhaps something that she said angered him to the point that what he did was pushed. And then here's this ICU nurse stepping in protection of her. And so it's wrong. It's every single step that they take is wrong and evidence of a savage nature, of a lack of humanity, a lack of training, a lack of caring.
But here's the problem, Monique. Here's the problem. We just saw government officials paid for with taxpayer dollars go on national television this morning across the Sunday shows and tell us that, quote, law enforcement didn't assault anyone. That's what Greg Bovino said. To your point, Monique, I advocated on behalf of Border Patrol agents who went to prison for years for doing far less, like pushing a detainee down with their foot, pushing them down with their foot. Not shoving someone, not shooting someone, not spraying pepper spray in defenseless people, innocent people, protesters' faces unprovoked. I mean, there are a lot of law enforcement officers who lost their careers or who are sitting in prison right now under 242 Title 18, which is the violation of civil rights under the color of law. You guys know what that is. Michael, you know what that is. As someone who is a law enforcement officer, you guys were threatened with that all the time. That's what's happening every single day on these streets, just with in a half an hour of footage that we're seeing on the streets of the way these agents are approaching protesters and the way they're handling the situations. These bastards aren't trained for this. Dana Bash this morning on CNN questioned Greg Bovino about the training of these officers in urban policing. And he spouted off some bullshit and propaganda lies that we all know. Those of us who are experienced in this area, we all know that they're full of shit. They're not trained for this. He used the examples of Detroit, of Buffalo, of New Orleans. Detroit and Buffalo are ports of entry. Those are the Border Patrol agents that are at the bridges and the ports of entry where they're like checking your cars. They're like toll operators and TSA agents, okay? They're not urban policing. That's bullshit. We need to be clear about the fact that these guys are not trained for this. We need to be clear that the Border Patrol chief, Greg Bovino, went out there and said that that this guy came to a protest with a weapon, right? Where are the Second Amendment guys? To the point earlier in this conversation, where are they? Because last time I checked, a bunch of guys went to January 6th and they claimed that they were peaceful protesters who were armed, but they were considered patriots. This guy's a domestic terrorist. Those guys actually assaulted people on the Capitol. They actually were there premeditated to inflict violence in an insurrection. And this guy, Alex Purdy, an ICU nurse who dedicated his life to service, who was lawfully carrying his weapon, he's a domestic terrorist. We have to call this out. And Don, I'm so glad that you're having these conversations. I'm so glad we have independent journalists who are doing this, because the mainstream media isn't doing it enough. They're letting the narrative, they're challenging a little bit, but not forcefully enough. You have Todd Bland, you have others who are out here with taxpayer dollars telling the American people that we're not seeing what we're seeing, with the brave people who have taken video, that we're not seeing what we're seeing, trying to change the narrative. We can't let them do it. We cannot. It's against everything they're trained for.
And Nick, you got a lot of background noise, brother. A lot of background noise.
it's not just urban policing.
Nick, I'll mute you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's policing, period.
Correct.
If you have training as a law enforcement officer, whether you're breaking up a brawl in Waco, Texas, or whether you're doing a traffic stop in the middle of Chicago, there are skills that these people obviously do not have. It was the case with Renee Nicole Good. I said they don't have any business doing traffic stops because they obviously don't know how. They don't know how to secure arrests. They don't know how to effectuate an arrest. They don't know how to frisk, how to search. They don't know how to do any of those things. And there's this journalist who posted a couple of weeks ago how she got hired and likely failed a drug test, didn't have the requisite experience, didn't do the background check, and they within days hired her to work as an ICE agent. So they obviously are failing the American people in that regard. And to your point, Tara, the statements that were made by the head of DHS, by Nome, the statements that were made by all of the different agencies, by Vino, by all of the things that they are saying under normal circumstances, those statements would never be made at all, right?
Nope.
There would be somebody like me in the general counsel's office who would be advising. Pam Bondi's shop would actually be working, and they would say there is an active investigation underway. Certainly any loss of life is tragic. We will report as the circumstances reveal themselves. There would not be any of this happening, and there would be updates as more information was being made known. But when from the top you have a wannabe dictator who is a criminal, then the lawlessness is pervasive. It's just in every single part because they do not care. Like there would be no way immediately they would be defending the actions of agents if it's going to turn out that the agents did something that was wrong, that did something that was against training. But they don't care because they know they're going to stick to their story no matter what.
And they wouldn't be investigating themselves. Like, for example, if there's like, say, the Secret Service is involved in a shooting, they don't investigate themselves. The FBI comes in and investigates them. So there's independence. Or a situation like this, there would always be cooperation with the state and local authorities. Why are they trying to obfuscate transparency here? It's because they have a story, and it's bullshit.
It's the same that they did. It's the same that they did with Renee Good. I just want to get back. I want to get back to Nick Valencia because he's on the scene. Nick, update us on what you're seeing. Now we're seeing some images of folks who are out there. Nothing like yesterday. Nick, talk to us about what you have heard and what you're seeing there.
Certainly nothing like yesterday. But first, to speak to that point about the investigation, I was behind the police line yesterday, and I was briefly detained by the FBI. We saw 4 FBI agents show up here so we could confirm independently. Primary source of the FBI was investigating the shooting within hours of Alex Purdy's death. We don't know where the status of that investigation is right now, but we know they were on the scene. And behind me here, this visual has grown quite large in size here. This morning, it was just a few dozen people. Now, it's upwards of 100 people, and it's really a point of reflection. This community, as I was mentioning earlier, has really gone through a lot. There's a lot of post-traumatic stress here. They have been in the nexus of this largest federal immigration operation, and it's not, just here. It's really scattered all over, from St. Paul, Bloomington, the neighboring communities. Elementary school kids just too afraid to go to school. They've gone to remote learning in some places. In other places, teachers are actually walking students to class because of what happened this past week to 5-year-old Liam Ramos. They're asking their teachers, is that me? Is that going to be my fate next? Just a short time ago, while a couple of your other guests were talking, they were starting to repeat the names of those individuals who have been shot and killed by police. And it goes, we should mention, 66% of the homicides in the city this year are at the hands of federal immigration officers here in Minneapolis. This is supposed to make people safer, right? Trump did this, the president did this because he wanted to make America safer. The amount of federal officers here on the streets have made people here feel less safe. Consider that. Think about that irony, and that's what they're out here protesting. Yesterday, they were really upset to see what appeared to be the local police protecting the feds. You saw state troopers out here, conservation officers. You saw a ton of federal agencies, but you also saw the local police department kind of stand in the way between demonstrators and the feds. even after all that's been said here by the mayor, even after all that's been said by the police chief. And then when we got news of the National Guard coming in, that really, I think, sort of shook a lot of people up. We went down there to the Federal Whipple building where there's been a lot of activity here, a few miles away from where we're at here in Uptown. And we saw those National Guard, vehicles deployed. We haven't seen them, though, on the streets here. This scene, quite different, as you mentioned, Don, from yesterday. This is the site of a lot of the clashes between demonstrators and police. We saw multiple uses of tear gas, chemical agents launched. We saw less lethal rounds. We were shot at. We were roughed up by the Border Patrol. It was also, I should mention, yesterday during my live, we were live for about 2.5 hours. And initially I thought my phone had died and it went down until I started hearing from several other independent journalists who I don't know. They had similar stories. Their live stream was shut down. So there exists a scenario that potentially somebody did that deliberately to us because they don't want people to see what's going on here. Thank God that people are reporting. Right now, behind me, as I'm talking, you have an activist who is taken in the middle of the streets and trying to encourage other demonstrators, other people here who have shown up to join him in the streets. Yesterday, they declared an unlawful assembly, which is how they were able to get people out of here. But right now, it's residents here that are here to pay their respects to Alex Pretty, Renee Good, and the countless others that have been impacted by all of this. Don.
Don,
Oh boy!
can I ask a question? Can I ask Nick a question about that? Hey, Nick, were you guys and the other independent journalists in the same vicinity, or were you in different parts of the city when your live streams went down?
We were in the same part here. So I talked to somebody at the Federal Whipple building who was here. He said same thing, his recording went down. And then I'm part of an independent collective of journalists here, the Owl Media Collective, just so we are not alone out here. Another one of them had the same thing happen. So, I don't want to create rumors, but this is 3 different sources who don't know each other, who the same thing happened to it. So you have to explore this possibility.
The reason why I asked you is because, and I can't say how I know, but there is technology, there's abilities to do that, to jam signals and to make sure that in certain areas that live streams and cell phones and things like that cannot work. So there is technology that our federal law enforcement agencies have that can do that. So you have to remember that ICE is funded more than any other law enforcement agency in the entire country. You have Peter Thiel and the tech bros that have all this kind of surveillance and technology that they are buying up. You have Israeli technology that they're using, all for inside of ICE. So I'm just saying that what Nick is talking about is I'm not surprised, and that should scare the shit out of everyone.
Yeah,
we know that either. Yeah, we know that they're trying to operate above the law here, saying basically they're above the Constitution, no longer waiting for judicial warrants to be signed, saying an administrative warrant is good enough to go in. What happened to the Fourth Amendment? These constitutional limits and protections that we have, it's against the Constitution. And we also know, according to 404 Media, that they are using technology in a way that's never been used before. They're able to get the data that is off your phone already from the apps you already have installed, basically draw a line around a neighborhood, and the feds are tracking where you sleep, who you're hanging out with, who was the last phone in that area. And that's how they're able to, sort of basically triangulate some of these operations that they're doing. So this idea that they're using technology and that they wouldn't use it in a scenario here when they don't want to see, mainstream cameras didn't show up here until an hour and a half after I was on the ground, okay? This shows the vitalness of what Don and I are doing and others like us out there that are, we're not bought by or paid by anyone. We're out here telling what we see with our eyes, and we're delivering, the truth here. And so this is what we're seeing out here right now.
Well, Nick, and I mean, I don't have to tell you guys, this, is that they were basically shamed into going to the scene. I've seen some folks, who were in the mainstream media being shamed to go, shamed into going to the scene. And I think they finally figured out that this is important, but you weren't getting this. And why weren't you getting this? I think that you were not getting it because the mainstream folks are nervous about not currying favor, so to speak, with the Trump folks. You guys, if you think I'm wrong, you can tell me, but I don't think that I'm wrong in this.
I mean, it certainly feels that way.
Everybody's quiet.
You're not going to get a disagreement from me.
It certainly feels that way, Don. It feels like, the institutions have been corrupted, even if our players within the institutions have not. And if the people at the top are playing all of the same game with the powerful and doing this because of mergers or because they want to keep their jobs or the gravy train running for them, again, it goes back to my point. We struggle from this disease of individualism in this country. And until you're impacted by this directly, you don't care. You don't care as a white American, right? That, brown and black people are being ripped from the streets. Thankfully, there's so many allies here who do. And you know what? If they're willing to gun down a white man in broad daylight, what are they doing to the people of color behind closed doors where there is no accountability?
That is a very good question. And that is no doubt they're willing to do anything. I want to play something for everyone, and hopefully I can get it to, since I'm here by myself. I'm going to share this. Tell me if you see it. See it on the screen? I guess you don't. I may have too many things up. Let me get rid of something because I want to make sure that I get this up. This is really important. Okay. So here we go. I'm going to play this. Hopefully.
Hey, Don, just mute us all.
I will. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
here we go. I'm going to share, view this tab, blah, blah, blah. I'm doing this all by myself, guys.
I know.
Okay, let's see.
We're helping you out, Don. We're helping you out. It's a Sunday. We're all here. We're in it together.
So no producers. I'm like, I can do this. I'm like, okay, go for it. All right, let's see if I can. Let's see if I can get this up. Okay. I had no idea what the hell I'm doing. Anyways, I'm going to remove this from the stage and then I'm going to add it again. There we go.
There you go.
Now you see who it is. There we go. Okay. So here we go.
He just rolled up, so he hasn't really figured out.
You can't hear it, Don.
You can't hear it?
No, you mute us and unmute her.
Just
Okay, stand by. Okay, stand by.
I told him if it was like a national night out Tuesday, they would have to shut down no problem.
Okay, I'm going to pause here.
Have to be
I'm gonna mute you guys and let's see what happens. 'Cause I really want you guys to hear this. I'm gonna mute everyone, so
Yeah.
stand by.
Whoever, they need to have a half memorial, a half street, and they think this is track control.
Okay,
And
where
it's
is
like-
Nick? Nick, I'm gonna mute you too. Okay, now you guys tell me if I'm doing this without producers, so pardon all of that. Pardon all of this. Tell me, can you hear it? Can you hear it?
No, Don, you can't hear it.
Can't hear it. Okay. Well, I'm not going to try to. I'm not going to do that to the viewers. Sorry, I don't know why I can't get it to play. So let me add all of you guys back. Are you guys there? There you go. So, anyways, she is basically saying now her language is not as strong as it was yesterday. It appears that she has softened her language. Maybe she's figured out that what she's saying is not adding up to the reality of it. Charles Coleman is here. The great Charles Coleman is here, who's predicted everything that happened. Charles, thank you for joining us. Did you see Kristi Noem this morning?
I did, Don, and tend to agree that she has walked back some of her comments, but I do think that it's telling. I think one of the things that we've seen characteristically play out in this scenario is indicative of this administration, which is their penchant for narrative control means that they get in front of microphones without having the mics, but without having the facts in front of them early enough. And, as a lawyer, I'm sort of trained not to do that or to avoid doing that because at the end of the day, these are public records. And so they can sort of come back to bite you. So the less you say early on, the better. I know a lot of times the public gets a little frustrated when you say we're still looking into things, we're still investigating things, but there's a reason why people do that. And the reason they do it is because you don't want to end up like Kristi Noem, where you've given the public one account of one thing, and then later on, the ocular evidence does not support what it is that you've said. But because this administration has been so dogged in their want to control narrative, they sort of jump in front of cameras and microphones and characterize people using all sorts of inflammatory language to describe people and to describe things that, quite frankly, I won't say never happened, but did not happen the way they say they did.
I don't understand how they are going to get away with this when the video shows the exact opposite. I don't know. I mean, look, you are a legal mind. When you look at that video and they're slowing it down and analyzing it, it looks like they had removed his gun. He also, who was on this morning, Scott Bessent, saying, have you ever brought a gun to a protest? And he was on with Jonathan Carlton. I was like, well, no, because I don't have a license to carry. But if I have a license to carry, then it is perfectly within his rights to be able to bring a weapon. If he has a concealed to carry or a license to carry, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, legal people and police officer who's here. Am I wrong with that? He has every right to carry that weapon with him.
No, that's not wrong. And in Minnesota, they don't distinguish between open carry and concealed carry. It's one license, and you have the right to do either if you get the license. And during the days that we've seen the protests, we've actually seen people out there with their big old rifles and everything. So these agents can't claim that they had ignorance as to the law, not that it would be an adequate defense, but they can't even claim that them thinking that he has a weapon is a crime or is a threat in and of itself, because it is not in a state where you have a right to have a weapon. Now, trying to disarm someone because they're in some sort of scuffle or they view the suspect as resisting, that's fine. But even in that, what they initially were saying and what that sounds like to me when I listen to the video is he's got a gun, as if that's a problem in and of itself, as if that is against the law, and it was not. And to Charles's point and your question, Don, how do they get away with it? They don't. It's going to take time, but Kristi Noem is going to end up in a seat being deposed about this. Maybe she won't still be in office. Maybe she'll be attached in her individual capacity, but the questions will be asked by these civil litigants. And every one of these statements that they're making in the law, we call statements by party opponents. And they are so dumb that they go way up the chain. You can't even blame it on your underling. Like, if they had any brains at all, they would be putting people in front of the cameras that are 2 steps removed from the head of these divisions so that they could claim that they didn't have all of the information. But when she speaks on behalf of the United States government. That those are all statements by party opponents who will be defendants in cases, and they're going to be held to account. And I expect charges. I don't just expect civil verdicts. I expect charges, because they are saying statements that if they go into depositions and try to hold on to them, it's going to be perjury.
Monique,
and I look forward to all of it.
Monique, the only space in which I disagree or would push back on the notion of charge, I absolutely agree 100% on everything you said with regarding the civil cases. The reason why I don't expect charges is because ultimately, anytime remotely coming in the future, those charges would have to come from the federal government,
right?
Right. So let me be very clear for our listeners. Monique is correct. There is a completely legitimate basis for charges, and under any other sort of administration, that would be the appropriate expectation to have. But from a practical space, in this world, because of Harmeet Dillon, because of Pam Bondi, I don't, the Pam Bondi who was selected as the Attorney General, I might have sort of I had an expectation to say, let me see what she does in this scenario. But the Pam Bondi who we have seen as the Attorney General, I have no expectation for criminal charges, not because, as you pointed out so appropriately, that these facts match something that should be charged, but because we've seen that it would have to come from an administration that, quite frankly, shirks accountability almost at every corner.
The Department of Justice is run by Donald. The Department of Justice is run by Donald Trump's personal attorneys. Todd Blanche was
For
on
DOJ
Meet the
charges.
Press today. He's the deputy attorney general. He's the number 2 to Pam Bondi. He's the guy that gave preferential treatment to Ghislaine Maxwell, a child predator, for fuck's sake. He's the guy that represented Donald Trump in his cases. He went on Meet the Press today defending the agents. Greg Bovino went on CNN today and said that the Border Patrol agents were the victims here. So we're not going to see any charges coming out of this administration. But there's no statute of limitations on this, is there, or is there? Because this is why we need to get these bastards out of here, and then they can go back and charge them, because it's not going to happen under this administration. But is there a statute of limitations, guys, on the potential charges for these guys? Because I mean,
there's no statute of limitations on homicide in this country, and it's state to state depending on other things. But that's why I said I'm not looking for federal charges. I'm looking for state charges, and I expect them to be inventive, because these people made statements while they were on Minnesota soil. And I expect for AG Ellison, and I expect for the governor, and I expect for the state's attorneys, and yes, it's going to take some time, but they also can argue, as far as statute of limitations is concerned, that they shouldn't toll, because we're dealing with a regime that won't do what it's supposed to do. So we're going to have to be very inventive, and they're going to have to get her in a deposition, and they're going to have to wait for her to lie in a deposition, and then she's got perjury. So it's going to take some doing. You know, I'm a strategist. I can sit back and wait all damn day to be able to get this accomplished. But I believe that there are state charges and violations, and that there have been injuries to public safety, and that the state holders need to pursue that. And then where the federal charges are concerned, yes, we need to win in November, and we are going to have to wait a while, and we're going to be running down a clock, probably some 2-year clocks on some things, but we can get it done. I'm optimistic about the law.
I think we're going to see a conversation with the supremacy clause go to the Supreme Court over this, because I mean, I don't have confidence in the Supreme Court, except that they, have started to question some things, but that's what we're going to see. But that's what we need to see play out. Something has to happen. There has to be some kind of accountability. Sorry, Michael, you started to talk.
Yeah. No, I mean, just going off of what my distinguished colleague Monique said, there's absolutely nothing that prohibits state and local charges for these individual ICE agents, and there's nothing that prevents them from conducting independent investigations. And while, yes, they might not have access to some of the evidence, there's video evidence, there are witnesses that they could be interviewing, there's plenty of things that they could be doing. And, I get it, they were denied access to the crime scene with a judicial warrant. Continue to apply for warrants, continue to create a paper trail, demand from the governor, Tim Walz, more than just rhetoric. And then when it comes to deploying state and local law enforcement, they need to be, we've seen them deployed almost in this standby capacity and observing ICE agents manhandle protesters, assault protesters, deploy gas in a manner that is inconsistent with departmental policies. I want to see law enforcement officers lined up with their backs to the protesters, facing ICE agents, showing that they are there to protect those protesters.
All right, now
their First Amendment right in this moment.
I want to play this, guys, and hopefully it'll work this time. So let's see if I can do this, because this is really important. We've been discussing. And here we go.
Dana, every situation is different. What our officers are faced with here in Minneapolis are chaotic, very difficult and violent situations in which individuals, and this suspect is not the only one to bring a loaded weapon to a riot. The situations are chaotic and ever changing. Follow directions for law enforcement. Don't inject yourself knowingly beforehand into a law enforcement situation.
That's,
the victims are the Border Patrol agents. I'm not blaming the Border Patrol agents. The victim are the Border Patrol agents. The suspect put himself in that situation. The victims are the Border Patrol agents there. Dana, you don't know he was unarmed. I don't know he was unarmed. That's freeze frame adjudication of a crime scene via a photo.
Isn't that what they
why we
use when
have
they're
investigators.
Yeah, it's called
evidence.
Why we have an investigation that is going to answer those questions. How many shots were fired? Who fired shots? Where was the guns? Where were the guns located? All those questions are going to be answered in the investigation. We're not going to adjudicate that here on TV.
But you
in one
did.
freeze frame there.
So I'm not.
That agent was taking any gun away. That could have been the agents, because we don't know that. The facts are going to come to light as to what exactly happened with an investigation. That's why we investigate.
So the sum total of what he has just said, I don't take significant issue with. I think that the characterization of the Border Patrol agent as a victim is quite a stretch, but stressing the importance of an investigation and what is and is not known, I think is fairly routine and purposeful. But I may
wait, Charles, did you see the whole interview?
No.
I mean, that's bullshit. He only did that because
Tara, I
mean,
agree.
in isolation, yes, but
Yes,
in the totality of it, he just lied before that, and then Dana Bash cornered him, and then he had to say that. So I just want to be clear.
Sarah, I'm not caping at all. I'm talking about the small snippet that we just saw. Completely agree with you. But I do, the civil rights attorney, like I've been speaking as the former prosecutor, the civil rights attorney in me can't help but to sort of like zoom out at this moment, as if what I find so troubling is this sort of idea that law enforcement walks into these spaces like, we've never seen civil unrest in this country before. We've never seen civil protests. Like, we just don't know how to handle it. We've never seen people who are resisting law enforcement and protesting. And so we have no playbook on this is what we have to do. And the reality is, no, it's not. And there are people who are on this live who are old enough to remember that there has been a history of protest, of civil disobedience, of resistance in this country that has had varied results and many times did result in the injury and or casualty of human life. But then there were also a lot of times when it did not have to and it didn't result in that way. And so this idea of like law enforcement throwing up their hands and saying more or less, if you're outside protesting, you're going to get injured, or you're in the line of fire, or you're putting yourself in harm's way, to me is a ahistorical, un-American, quote unquote, interpretation of what freedom of speech, freedom of association actually means when you go outside and you're actually expressing yourself in opposition to whatever it is that you're expressing yourself in opposition to. So I the civil rights attorney in me has a very big problem with the way that that's sort of glossed over with the rhetoric that we're hearing from law enforcement, almost as if to suggest, well, if you don't want to get hurt, don't be outside.
Yeah, that's true. Would you guys, if you will, indulge me, because it's gotten so much of a response here on the program. I want to put this up so that you can see it and we can just sort of walk through it as we get it. So this is what everyone has been wanting to see. I'm going to share it. Hopefully you can view it. Let's see if you can see it on that. I'm going to put it up on the screen and let's see if I can get it to come on. Stand by. Again, I'm doing this by myself. There's lots of tabs open. Usually people are like, okay, we got you, Don. All right.
We're giving you grace. We're giving you grace.
That's okay. Hey, look, we're out here doing the work. How about that?
Now is U.S. Border Patrol Commander at Large, Greg Bobino. Thank you for being here. Sir, you are still in Minneapolis, and I want to get to a lot of questions that we have that are unanswered. First and foremost is that Alex Preddy approached Border Patrol agents with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. I want to go back to one of the videos, and I know you can see it there, and I want to ask you about what you're seeing, because multiple angles of this incident show him holding up a cell phone and recording it, not a gun. Did he at any point pull out his weapon?
Dana, good morning, and thanks for having me. The weapon, and we do know that the suspect did bring a weapon, a loaded 9mm high
That wasn't
capacity
the question.
handgun.
Correct.
We do know that. As far as what happened in that intervening moment with the video that you just showed, that's going to come to light through the investigation. That's being investigated, and those facts and those questions will be answered soon enough.
Okay, but the Homeland Security Secretary is not waiting for that investigation to take place before saying that Alex Preddy was, quote, brandishing a weapon. Let's go to video 7, because, of course, you know this far better than I. The definition of brandishing is waving or flourishing something, especially a weapon, as a threat or an anger and excitement. That's just a still photo of what Alex Preddy appears to be holding. There is nothing that we have seen that showed him, as Secretary Noem said, brandishing a weapon. Have you, sir, seen something different?
Dan, I think what we need to take a look at here is the situation in its totality. What happened leading up to this situation?
Yeah, exactly.
The suspect decided to inject himself into a law enforcement action. What's not being said here is the fact that Border Patrol agents and law enforcement were conducting a targeted law enforcement effort against a violent, illegal alien that was nearby, and that suspect injected himself into that law enforcement situation with a weapon. And what happened between when that situation first came about and the shooting, that's going to be investigated, and we're going to get to the facts of that.
Well, you said yesterday that this looks like a situation where the individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. What evidence do you have that he wanted to massacre law enforcement? Because all the videos that we have, and I do want to, we just have a still shot up now, but I do, control room, want to play one of the other videos. Let's play video number 1 again. It doesn't look anything like he's trying to massacre law enforcement. In fact, he was filming, and then it looked like he was trying to help another individual there who was pushed down by law enforcement, and then they went
assaulted.
after him.
In fact, I believe that the fantastic training that our law enforcement partners have, the fact that they're highly trained, prevented any specific shootings of law enforcement. So good job for our law enforcement in taking him down before he was able to do that. And again, Dana, let's look at why he was there in the first place. Was he simply walking by and just happened to walk into a law enforcement situation and try to direct traffic and stand in the middle of the road and then assault, delay, and obstruct law enforcement? Or was he there for a reason? Did he fall victim to that violence and arrest by a Mayor Fry, a Governor Waltz?
I'm going to pause in a minute, guys. Let it finish. I promise you. There's a little bit left.
Portray Border Patrol agents and ICE agents as Gestapo, Nazi, and many other words. Did this individual fall victim, as many others have, to that type of heated rhetoric?
I want to stay focused on this incident right now because.
Okay.
All right.
Go on.
Let me break this shit down, because this is absolutely, utterly insane. First of all, I have never in my entire life heard a law enforcement professional go on television and speak in such speculative way about the motivation behind something that we all saw with our very eyes is not the way that he is recounting it. And I'm going to go back to the very beginning. He describes the scene, which we all can see. We can see the moments leading up to this as a riot. Now, he must be speaking to it in a colloquial sense, because that is a very specific term used by law enforcement to describe a specific type of situation in which law enforcement sees that it has devolved into a chaotic scene that is outside of their control, using simply their mere presence to deter unlawful behavior. If you take the Capitol riot, for example, you very clearly hear the commander of that scene declare it an unlawful assembly and a riot. That is a specific term. This was not a riot. So the idea that he brought a firearm to a riot is absolutely absurd and insane. It is clear from the video that you see the victim in this case walking down the sidewalk. You see with your own eyes, he intervenes on behalf of a woman who is assaulted by his agents.
Yep.
They were the aggressors. And then when he intervenes on her behalf, trying to prevent them from assaulting her, they then escalate the assaultive behavior and assault the victim in this case.
With pepper spray, with a chemical irritant. That's not de-escalation, right, Mike? On the use of force continuum, it's the complete opposite.
Then describing, I like how he's so dismissive of the video account, which is in fact evidence. And as someone who has witnessed this and been part of these types of investigations countless times, I can tell you right now, in a normal scenario, law enforcement officials, the FIT investigation team would be going through that videotape frame by frame to try to discern what it was that the agents involved did and when they did it. If there was body-worn camera footage, they would be going through that frame by frame. My understanding is ICE doesn't wear body-worn cameras, and so that is a perspective that we will not have access to. Everything that came out of Bovino's mouth is absolute and utter propaganda and bullshit. This is an agency that is acting lawlessly, that is acting outside of the Constitution, that is not to be trusted. It is an illegitimate agency, and that's coming from somebody who spent 20 years of his life taking violent criminals off the streets and proudly served as a Metropolitan Police officer in Washington, D.C. This is disgusting. It is a disgrace to the badge. It is a disgrace to American law enforcement. And hey, I'm not going to sit here and say we're above reproach and reform, but this shit makes me sick to my stomach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, before I move on, anybody, I'm going to play a bit more of it. Anybody else want to say anything?
I just want to ask one question of Michael, given that he's actually lived this every day. Another point, like, and folks know, my husband's a federal agent and 25 years on the job, and he feels the exact same way that Michael feels. And the things that he said to me about this is that all of those law enforcement officers who went through training and what they are trained, this is the complete opposite of that. And the fact that these fucking bastards get to go out here with impunity and break the law and violate people's civil rights every single day, paid for by our tax dollars, is such an affront to all the law enforcement officers who actually protect and serve. And another point that he said about this whole situation is, under no circumstances should 6, 7, 8 agents be on top of the a person like this in a scrum like that. That is so reckless and endangers not only the community at large, the people around them, but the agents themselves, because the chaos of having a bunch of people jumping on someone like that those agents could have shot one of their own. You have different commands being thrown out there. Like, Michael, isn't that also another area because that is completely against training? The fact that Greg Bovino goes out here and DHS and everyone keeps saying how well trained these guys are and that they were acting under that is bullshit.
We talked about that earlier in the conversation, and I wanted to speak on training, law enforcement training. I went through 2 different law enforcement academies. I started my career in 2001 with the United States Capitol Police, and so I attended the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Winco, Georgia, which is the same training center that ICE, Customs and Border Patrol, and these federal agencies involved also attend. Now, at that time, I went through the Mixed Basic Police Training Program, and it taught you about domestic policing in America. They go through that training as well, but I consider these training events to be a familiarization. This idea that law enforcement in this country is interchangeable is absurd. There's as many jobs within law enforcement agencies, as there are in any other career field, and even within a local police department, doesn't mean you have the street experience as another officer. I mean, you have people that work behind a desk their entire career. You have people that engage in proactive policing every single day. And so it's on the job training. It's going out there and, interacting with the public, enforcing the laws every single day. That's what prepares you for these types of encounters. This is clearly an agency that doesn't know how to deal with the general public, doesn't know how to deal with individuals that have, rights.
Michael, can you stand by?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to get to this. Okay, here we go. This is Keith Ellison, the Attorney General.
Granted the motion. The Department of Homeland Security and the federal government are now enjoined from destroying or altering evidence related to yesterday's shooting. The fact that anyone would ever think that an agent of the federal government might even think about doing such a thing was completely unforeseeable only a few weeks ago. But now, this is what we have to do. As we said in our filing last night, the irreparable harm we would suffer if the federal government were allowed to destroy evidence is so weighty that any harm to the federal government does not even budge the scales in a court balancing of the scales. It's imperative that we preserve as much evidence as possible so that the state investigators are allowed to access the evidence to ensure a fair, thorough investigation. And I will say, I've heard not one single law enforcement or investigative agent in the state of Minnesota say that they won't share the information with the federal government. I've heard quite the opposite from the federal government. Now, Operation Metro Surge. As I noted when I started, this appears to be the largest single deployment or surge of immigration agents in the history of the country. And as a result, tremendous damage has been inflicted upon our state. We've had 2 killings within 2 weeks in an additional non-lethal shooting. We've had countless numbers of people who have been stopped and had the demand for their papers, to have to show their papers in America. We've had door-to-door knocks where people have their homes barged into without cause of right. And we've had stores have to shutter, students not going to school. We've had reduction in employees going to their job sites. We've had jobs being, little markets being shut down, restaurants being interfered with. We've had a countless number of harms. And so we took the action of suing the federal government over Operation Metro Surge. And tomorrow morning, I'm going to be in federal court with my team arguing for a restraining order against Operation Metro Surge. I filed this case almost 2 weeks ago, and this will be our first hearing. The lawsuit we filed is one that is caused by the unprecedented nature of this surge. It is a novel abuse of the Constitution that we're looking at right now. No one can remember a time when we've seen something like this, when a state can marshal facts to show that our targeting is not based on excessive amounts of undocumented immigrants or anything like that, but we're targeted because of politics, which violates our First Amendment rights. The 10th Amendment, which we are entitled as a state to equal sovereignty, and we have been denied that. The federal government is literally commandeering and coercing the state of Minnesota to bend to its will, which is the prerogative of the people of the state of Minnesota. Let me remind everybody, let me take everybody back to 8th grade civics. The states predate the United States and came into the Union preserving their rights as states to be the states that the citizens of those states want them to be within
Uh-oh.
I'm just showing the restraining order.
Oh, okay. I was like, what happened?
This is a copy of the TRO.
Yeah. This is why I say this is going to go to the Supreme Court because it's a Article 1 issue, an article and 10th Amendment.
Jacob Fry, if he were here, could tell you that they've spent north of $2 million on overtime responding to ICE.
Wow.
It damaged our economy, hurt our education system, and terrorized community members. And it must stop. And tomorrow is a big step in that direction. Now, as I noted a moment ago, people will ask, well, why Minnesota?
Right. Right.
I'll say this.
Damn it.
Minnesota is dealing with targeted oppression from the federal government because of who we are and who we value.
That's right.
Minnesota is a place where we welcome the stranger. We have a number of nonprofits that focus on refugee resettlement in Minnesota. Minnesota is a place where we take care of the vulnerable among us. We're a state that just passed paid family leave. We're a state that believes in feeding our kids who are in school, and we're a state that believes that Minnesota is a great place to live for everyone, no matter where you were born. Of course, we obey all laws, but we still believe that immigration is not a sin. We're leading, they're coming after our state, in my view, because of what we stand for, because we voted 3 times in favor of somebody not Donald Trump, which he has publicly said he resents deeply and believes is not even true. I can tell you it's not about fraud.
Nope.
That's for damn
because
sure.
if he sent people who understand forensic accounting, we'd be having a different conversation. But he's sending armed, masked men. This is a pretext, and it's not supported by the facts at all, which has brought us to court challenging the justification that the president has offered.
Mm-hmm.
For those watching around the country, I would submit to you that just as Portland and Chicago and LA were precursors to Minneapolis, Minneapolis is a precursor to a whole lot of other places that they have their eye on right here, right now, including Maine and several other states. If we don't stop this behavior here, it will only expand, and it won't be good for anyone in our country. Minnesota is staying strong, and I want to join Governor Walz in my just pride in being a Minnesotan. No football game victory could ever make me feel as good about our state as I do about people standing up, helping their neighbors, engaging in mutual aid, giving each other rides different places, making sure that there's enough groceries, protesting, using their First Amendment rights. This state has a lot of spirit. And Minnesota nice is a real thing. I wasn't fortunate enough to be born in Minnesota. I was born and grew up in Michigan. And I can tell you that this state has a lot of nice people. It really does. And a lot of people who believe in taking care of their neighbor and welcoming the stranger. And as we see right now, resisting tyranny. So I just want to say that as the courage of protesters and others who are helping their neighbors is so evident on the streets of this great state of ours, we at the Attorney General's office and in Minnesota state government can do no less than match the courage you have already shown. And we will not back down, we won't blink, we won't bow. We will stand firmly on our constitutional rights and in favor of Minnesotans. We will do that in the ballot box, at the courts. We will do that in the streets in a peaceful, legal, First Amendment protected way. And we will do it in a multitude of ways. But one thing we will not do is we will not back down and we will not bend. And so let me wrap up by saying this. We will never forget Alex Preddy. We will never forget Renee Nicole Good. And we will never forget any of the Minnesotans who have suffered so unjustifiably in this time. Minnesota is a great place. That is why I believe we've been targeted. But it's not going to work. And we'll be in court tomorrow arguing for the rights of every Minnesotan to stand up and be the generous, courageous people that we are. Thank you.
All right. That was the
Thank you, Attorney General.
Nelson. Here's the
We'll
Governor
be glad to
Walters
take
for
some
Florida.
questions, folks. Tom?
Several demands, I guess you would call them, regarding sanctuary cities, regarding fraud, voter rolls. Your response to that, is there anything you can do to meet the Trump administration, at least part of the way, to try to turn this around?
Well, first of all, it's not a serious attempt, and the Attorney General sent that in. I would thank the local folks and Commissioner Snell. Thank you to you and your team over there. In that letter, they talked about, you need to hand people over who are in your jails. They're taking credit for people that we've had in jail for a long time. We always hand them over, and the commissioner very clearly. So they're lying. They're lying. This has nothing to do with fraud. As the Attorney General said, they're not sending us forensic accountants. And these are things that have been we're dealing with now and have been for quite some time. So look, it's not a serious attempt to get at this. The way to fix this is get these folks out of here. We've continued to work with them. They asked us for these numbers. We provided them. We continue to show, and they're not serious. And look, I think everybody understands what the last request was, totally unrelated to anything on the voter files. This is, again, as the Attorney General said, Donald Trump telling everybody that the election was rigged, who started all this nightmare for America. Has nothing to do with it. And I would just give a pro tip to the Attorney General. There's 2 million documents in the Epstein files we're still waiting on. Go ahead and work on those.
I love Tim Waltz.
Amazing.
Well, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked it because, since Trump 2 began, and even including Trump 1, we filed a lot of lawsuits. We're north of 50 now, and they've been on everything from birthright citizenship to SNAP to things like the National Institute of Health to EV to all kinds of things, and they've been complying with the orders. Now, I will say, the foot drag, we've had to threaten them with contempt a few times, and I'm not saying that the compliance has been good. I am saying that open defiance of court orders is not something that we've experienced. And so I have every reason to believe that they will obey the court order. Now, if they don't, we have recourse and we'll pursue that recourse. On a deeper level, your question, I would simply say this. Just because they may not do the right thing does not absolve us of the responsibility of doing the right thing. We're going to seek legal recourse, and if they disobey a court order, then that's on them. But we're going to seek those orders, and we're going to insist that they be followed.
Paul, you want to talk about that?
So really, the key issue here is I think most sheriffs in the state do fully honor ICE detainers and provide notification. The issue becomes when they have a lawful reason to be released, bail, released by judicial order. The jail cannot hold that person beyond that point in time. That's the fundamental issue. There is not a lack of cooperation. There is just some legal boundaries. We've had some conversations with ICE about this. We think that there may be some things that could be worked out, but I don't think that's the core issue that we're really dealing with here.
Can I simply say that it puts Minnesota in a very difficult position, because if such a person were held beyond a period of time when the state court has the authority to hold them, then the state court is exposing itself to liability. So ICE just has to show up and do its job.
That's the fundamental question here. And that's the fundamental argument they keep making. We cooperate. We don't do their job. You saw it this week with rural conservative Cottonwood County. Sheriff had someone, told them this person's time is done. We can't just hold them indefinitely. It's against the law. So we're going to release this guy. Come and get him. They're too busy up here doing what they did yesterday to go pick up someone who actually should be removed from this country. And I don't know how many times they try and confuse the people across this country. It's their job to do immigrations and customs enforcement. It's law enforcement's job to do law enforcement in Minnesota. They are not doing immigration enforcement, saying we should be doing that, while they're apparently now trying to do extrajudicial law enforcement on our streets. So this is a red herring. It's untrue. The Attorney General of the United States put falsehoods into a letter she sends to me that we are doing what's asked of us, but we're not going to do your job for you. We have other things we need to do.
Attorney General, how concerned are you getting back to the evidence?
Right.
That you might not get access to his camera footage, and that you might not get to the bottom whether he was carrying an ID.
I am deeply concerned about the preservation of evidence, which is why we went to court last night. But I have faith in Judge. Have faith in Judge Tonsrud's order that it will be followed, and I can tell you that Minnesota officials are going to do everything we can to get to the truth. And again, as a prosecutor, I am not allowed to say what the final outcome is going to be. We have to get the evidence and find out. But if you're asking me, Tom, if I'm concerned, you better believe I am concerned. But look, they've got the order. Now they're going to defy the court if they don't follow it.
As a quick follow, you met with Vice President Vance when he was in town on Thursday, if I understand.
I did.
Can you tell us about what the tenor of that meeting was? His goal was to turn down the temperature. 2 days later, there was the shoot.
Well, I guess it didn't work, huh? I mean, here's the thing,
not
lying. Governor Walz and I were in Congress together for 12 years before both of us went to go serve in state government. We're used to talking to these folks. Why not see if there's something that can be arrived at? I can tell you that it was a polite meeting. I can also tell you that I walked out of there thinking that we probably weren't going to get anywhere. Because quite honestly, a few hours late, not even hours, a few minutes later, he just got up there and just articulated the same talking points he made to me in the meeting. I tried to correct him. He didn't want to hear that. And so I'm like, well, welcome to Minnesota. Thank you very much. You both and I, both of us have things to do. So see you later. And I left. It was cordial enough, but it was not fruitful. But look, I just think that, and I'm sure the governor agrees, if you can try to talk to somebody sensibly, we do. Mm-hmm. But that one didn't get where we had hoped.
One more and then it's over.
Do you know if the federal agents who were directly around Freddie during the time of the shooting are still out on the street in Twin Cities or anywhere else in Minnesota?
Don't know.
Don't know. They don't talk to us.
There you go.
They don't tell us. They don't.
With the BCA being denied access to the scene after getting a warrant, is there recourse for them that way, or do you feel that this restraining order that you obtained requiring the federal government to preserve evidence is that recourse?
So there are certain legal strategy decisions that I'm not at liberty to just go on about in a meeting like this one. What I can tell you is that both the warrant and the TRO are evidence of our resolve. And we are going to get to the truth of what happened to Mr. Alex Preddy and to the truth of what happened to Renee Good. And that's what we're pledging. And we're going to use every legal means to do that. So I can't tell you, I'm not at liberty to tell you what you're asking me, but I am here to assure the public and who's listening that we are going to get to the truth of this matter, and we won't be deterred and we won't be denied.
Just a quick one for Jackson. We did see BCA agents at the shooting scene this morning. Can you confirm what they were doing there?
Absolutely. The question is about whether or not the BCA agents were on the scene of the shooting. this morning, and they were continuing to collect evidence that they've seen. They're also doing some canvassing of the neighborhoods. I don't want to get into any more of the investigative process on this, but at the BCA, we are going to continue to investigate this shooting based on whatever evidence we're able to get, and we appreciate the Attorney General assisting us with the temporary restraining order to make sure that the federal government is retaining evidence that will be available, we would assume, to us at a later time. But the investigation will not pause. We are continuing to work on anything and everything that we possibly can.
I'm just going to close. I'm going to close with one thing that I promised the parents with Michael and Susan. And I speak to all Americans on this over these last 24 hours, what we saw. You're now knowing more about this young man, beloved by his family, accomplished ICU nurse, skillful in ability to work with veterans, someone who's beloved by community, no criminal record, lawful firearms owner. And you know what you saw. And then you heard the most powerful people in the world, certainly in this country, President, Vice President, Greg Bovino, Kristi Noem, narrate to you what you were looking at, that this was a domestic terrorist, crazed, running at law enforcement with the intent to kill massive numbers of them, sullying his name within minutes of this event happening.
Yep.
And then closing the crime scene, sweeping away the evidence, defying a court order, and not allowing anyone to look at it. I don't care if you are conservative and you are flying a Donald Trump flag, you're a libertarian, don't tread on me, you're a democratic socialist of America. This is an inflection point, America. If we cannot all agree that the smearing of an American citizen and besmirching everything they stood for and asking us not to believe what we saw, I don't know what else to tell you. This has to be the moment. Your government, here in Minnesota, I've made it clear, I'm accountable for things that happen here, and I will take responsibility for that. Someone has to be accountable. Someone has to hold the final decision on this. And sitting behind a keyboard at 2 a.m. and besmirching a VA nurse and a son and a coworker and a friend is despicable beyond all description. This is not, we need to see both sides. This is not, we need to wait for this. This is basic human decency. And at this point in time, I'm just asking, try for a moment to set aside the political side of it and go back and ground in the humanity of this. This family has gone through enough, and to have the most powerful man in the world drag their dead son with absolutely no evidence and gaslight the entire country, this is enough. And I would say, President Trump, you can end this today. Pull these folks back. Do humane, focused, effective immigration control. You've got the support of all of us to do that. Let our law enforcement continue to do what they do, making Minnesota one of the safest states in the country, one of the best places to live. Allow our children to go back to school. We have got children in Minnesota hiding in their houses, afraid to go outside. Many of us grew up reading that story of Anne Frank. Somebody's going to write that children's story about Minnesota. And there's one person who can end this now. And I'll go back to it again. Please show some decency, pull these folks out, reset this situation, and allow us to do the job that the Attorney General, myself, were elected to do, protect the people of Minnesota and carry out the laws of Minnesota. We'll be back with you when we get more information.
All righty. So
just listening.
That was the Attorney General and the Governor speaking to the media. So what did you guys think?
Well, the one thing that I wanted to enforce. When AG Ellison was discussing,
He's good, by the way.
and has been, by the way, from but he and Governor Walz were always partners in ways that sometimes you don't see. I'm dating back to George Floyd and what it took to get prosecutions then, which of course could not happen now. But when he talked about them being targeted and it being their way of life, and this and what he didn't say this time, but he did get into when he filed the suit a couple of weeks ago about them being targeted because of the enemies list, and as he said today, because they voted 3 times for another candidate for president. And Trump actively, by the way, just last week was denying it and saying Minnesota voted for him every time and it was a fraud, and et cetera and so on. But a lot of people around the country are thinking that one of the reasons Minnesota is targeted is because of a high immigrant, non-status immigrant population. And nothing could be further from the truth. So I just want to read the quote that Keith Ellison did in his press conference when he filed the suit. Immigration enforcement is clearly a pretext for the surge, as the percentage of Minnesota's population that are non-citizen immigrants without legal status sits at roughly 1.5%, which is less than half of the national average. States like Utah, Texas, and Florida have higher percentages of population ratios of non-citizen immigrants, yet Utah, Texas, and Florida have seen no corresponding surge of federal agents. Indeed, the combined non-citizen immigrant populations of Utah, Texas, and Florida add up to nearly the size of the entire population of the state of Minnesota. We know why it's not Texas, why it's not Florida, why it's not Utah. And so when you look at an attack like this, we can't even say that it's justified in terms of federal dollars being expended for them to actually get something accomplished with immigration. It is all a farce. It is all fraudulent. It is all because of that very small man in the Oval Office who has to answer back for any perceived wrong against him.
We have just a couple minutes left here, so I'm gonna let you guys go because I know it's a snowy day and you want to get to being cozy by the fire, whatever it is. But I just want to play a little bit more of this. I know you have to go, but just bear with me for a little bit because a lot of folks have been interested in this, and then I want to get, because I know this was outraged. This has outraged a lot of folks. Here we go.
It's muted.
You can't hear it?
No.
Oh, wow. I can hear it. I'm going to have to redo it. Let me pause it and get back to it. 1 second. Thank you, Tara. Let's see if I can get it to work. Of course.
We're here to be your assistant producers today, Don.
Thank you for assisting me.
We're all in this together.
Producing this. If I can't get it back up, then we'll just go.
Well, while you're working on that, I just want to say something else about why Minnesota is being targeted. I want people to remember that Minnesota was the epicenter of the George Floyd protests in 2020, where Donald Trump was incensed that during the summer of 2020, that law enforcement officers couldn't just shoot people and stop the protest. Remember that? Remember what happened in Lafayette Square in Washington, D.C.? Remember how the words of Miles Taylor and others who were familiar with the discussions that were going on, where Donald Trump literally wanted to violate people's civil rights then? They couldn't stand what happened. And this is his way of retribution. He also can't stand the fact that Tim Walz is everything Donald Trump wishes he could be. Tim Walz is a loving father. Tim Walz is compassionate. He's funny. He's beloved. Donald Trump is the complete opposite of everything that Tim Walz is. Tim Walz has a special needs son who he treats impeccably, who he lifts up, who he has a daughter who is sassy and smart. There's a loving family there that rallies around each other. And Minnesota legit is like Minnesota nice. And it's everything that Donald Trump is not. Donald Trump is a soulless, heartless, deep black hole of indecency and a deeply disturbed motherfucker. And that is not what Tim Walz is. And so he can't stand. I'm sorry. There's no days off when it comes to the indecency of these bastards. So, let your yay be yay, right? And nay be nay. I'm sorry. I'm not taking the Lord's name in vain. I'm being honest about who Donald Trump is. And that's true. So that's another reason why there is a certain vitriol and revenge and vengeance that Donald Trump has for who Tim Walz is and what Minnesota represents. And I think we need to put that in context because it's bigger than that. Why are they asking for the voter rolls too? Right? What they Pam Bondi and all that. I mean, we all know. Of course, that's what I'm saying. Like, so this is so much bigger than what they're trying to claim this is about in Minnesota. So, and also Ilhan Omar and what's going on with the Somali community. They can't stand it.
We can hear it.
Can you guys hear this now?
Because what you were saying is
okay, here we
he
go.
went there to try to stop this law enforcement operation. All of the video that we have seen shows him documenting it with his cell phone, which is a lawful thing to do. And the only time he seemed to interact with law enforcement is when they went after him when he was trying to help an individual who law enforcement pushed down. So where do you have the evidence to show that he was trying to impede that law enforcement operation?
Sure, Dan, at first he was there in the scene. He was in the scene actively impeding and assaulting law enforcement to the point.
But that's not illegal. He wasn't
Dan,
impeding it. He was filming it, which is a legal thing to do in the United States of America.
Dan, let's don't freeze frame adjudicate this now. He was there for a reason, and that reason was to impede law enforcement to the point.
What evidence do you have of that?
And here's a good point, Dana, is the fact that de-escalation techniques were utilized during this action. Those de-escalation techniques, whether it was physically trying to remove them from that law enforcement scene, that active law enforcement scene in which law enforcement were going after a violent illegal alien, or the use of pepper spray, which is another de-escalation technique. Those techniques did not work.
That woman they pushed was a violent.
Tried to use the minimum amount of force necessary to either effect an arrest, which in this case was more than likely 18 USC 111, assault on a federal officer, or
Where did he assault
obstruct.
a federal officer in any of the video that you have seen? Because it looked to us from every angle, sir, that he was approached by them when he was helping another individual who was pushed down. What evidence do you have that he was assaulting any law enforcement?
Dana, we don't need a suspect's help in an active law enforcement scene.
When you say
We don't need his
suspect,
help.
what is
We
he
didn't ask
suspected
his
of?
help. That's an active law enforcement scene. He knew that was an active law enforcement scene, especially when the officers approached him, and it's very evident he did not need to be where he was. And he
when somebody
on his own to stay there.
So when somebody is pushed down and a person's instinct is to help that person, when somebody's pushed down by law enforcement, you're saying that you just stand back and let law enforcement do what they're doing? I mean, is that really human nature?
You know, Dana, every situation is different. What our officers are faced with here in Minneapolis are chaotic, very difficult and violent situations in which individuals, and this suspect is not the only one to bring a loaded weapon to a riot. The situations are chaotic and ever changing. Follow directions for law enforcement. Don't inject yourself knowingly beforehand into a law enforcement situation.
With respect, it feels as though in some ways you're blaming the victim here.
That's exactly what he's doing.
The victims are the Border Patrol agents. I'm not blaming the Border Patrol agents.
God.
The victim are the Border Patrol agents. The suspect put himself in that situation. The victims are the Border Patrol agents.
I think we've heard enough, Don.
I want to go back.
All right,
I got to tell you this.
Because I think this is really.
Go ahead. I'm going to pause it. All right, go ahead, Mike.
There's more language that he's using here. And he refers to a law enforcement operation. Okay. He says there is a targeted law enforcement operation. First of all, conducting a law enforcement operation, you don't have the right as a law enforcement agency to deny people the ability to come and go in a public place, in public areas. I'm going to give you examples from what I know are factual examples of these quote unquote ICE law enforcement operations that were conducted in Washington, D.C., because I know former colleagues of mine that were there on the scenes of them. And what they would say is that we're going out and we're looking for a specific individual. That might be in a neighborhood. It might be, in a block. But while they're looking for this individual, they're also stopping anyone that might be in the vicinity of where this particular individual is. That is not a targeted operation. Okay, that's just law enforcement activity. Law enforcement officers can't even tell you, you see all the time, police say, oh, step back, step back. Listen, you can't impede a law enforcement officer from conducting his, or her official duties. That being said, they also can't set a boundary in a public place as to where you can or cannot go. If it's a public location, you're allowed to be there.
That's right.
Plain and simple. He's allowed to record, plain and simple. And so, this idea that because it's an operation, as he claims that it was an operation, that he can prohibit civilians from walking around is utter nonsense. It is bullshit.
I'm glad you said that, Michael, because I was going to ask you, because that's important for people to understand. They keep trying to say that they're framing this in the way as if these legal observers are somehow doing something illegal that justifies their reaction to them. Absolutely, it does not. It does not justify the way these agents are reacting to law-abiding citizens here. You have a legal right. I call these people moral first responders because that's exactly what they are. And Alex Preddy was literally a moral first responder, literally and figuratively, who is right. And it's like, you don't deserve a death sentence.
Dana Bash said what everyone is thinking, and what everyone is thinking is correct, in that this guy did what any normal human being would do in reacting to this situation. He sees a woman get pushed to the ground and he renders assistance to her.
Yep.
And never mind, but he's not just any person. He's medical personnel.
Right.
He's an ICU nurse and frankly duty bound, which is the other thing. She was asking, wouldn't anybody do that? Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. In the law, you could be watching somebody dying, and if you're just a regular person, you don't have an obligation to render aid, but doctors do. Nurses do. They take separate oaths that they will render aid. And so that's why with Renee Nicole Good, the doctor was so incensed, and we saw all these doctors come out in a press conference and say how pissed off they were when they found out that she had a pulse for 8 minutes and they refused to allow the rendering of aid. But the other thing that the administration is doing here that I see them do elsewhere, it's always shiny object over here so you can ignore what's right in front of your face. They give us this boogeyman that they were looking for. They give us this picture of this so-called violent criminal who was male, so we know it wasn't this woman who we don't even know anything about her status, but the woman who they pushed to the ground was obviously not the person that they're claiming they were out there on the streets looking for, who's this dangerous person. I can't even remember the name of the person that they say, and they flashed a picture. They did that within minutes, saying that was why they were out there. We don't have any independent verification that this person was even around, like anywhere on the scene. For all we know, it's somebody who's already locked up. All of that's going to come out in time, but they use that to justify their actions on the street that day, and that also is false.
Right. And even if they were looking for this person, which, what do we have any evidence to support that, other than them simply saying it, doesn't preclude or prohibit people from being in the area.
No.
You don't, this isn't Afghanistan where we're going into, seize a high value target and we use military assets and personnel to cordon off the area and prevent people from coming in. It's fucking America.
Right.
It's America.
Right. Well, not yet, Michael. Not yet.
It's conducting an arrest. I can still walk down the goddamn street. That it shouldn't subject me to being forcefully attacked, restrained, beaten, and then ultimately killed. That's insanity. Greg Bovino is such a despicable, disgusting sadist.
Well, and previously, Michael, I'll mention a case of mine that probably will ring a bell for you. Pershing Park, ring any bells?
Oh, yeah. Very familiar.
Previously, when you decide to arrest hundreds of people at the same time who are exercising their rights, and some of them were just wandering through the park,
Eating
not
lunch. They were
exercising
just
their
eating
rights.
lunch.
Previously in this country, the government would pay for that in a huge civil action, and every person that was rounded up would be lawyering up, and the government through its lawyers would be saying, we messed this up, and because we messed this up, and because the call never should have been made, here's what's going to get done about it. And now we're in a whole different universe where there is no messing up, because this president will not permit any mistakes to be tied to him. He never messes anything up. And so they are duty bound to not concede anything, or not even take it as an investigative moment to figure out whether their officers
But this is why. But this is why, Monique. This is the whole absolute immunity bullshit that they put out. That's why J.D. Vance held that press conference a couple weeks ago after Renee Good was killed, right? We all know that's not a thing. Absolute immunity is not a thing for law enforcement officers, okay? It may be for the president of the United States, thanks to the Supreme Court and that crazy ruling, but they are laying the predicate to invoke the Insurrection Act or worse, so that using all of these terms. Michael made the point earlier that they're using the term riot, using the term domestic terrorism. These are purposeful terms that they're using to try to desensitize the American people to the unconstitutional extrajudicial actions that these guys are engaging in. It is all to lay the predicate for that, so that when they do bring in active duty troops, or we do have, God forbid, another Kent State type of situation, that they are trying to say it was all lawful because X, Y, and Z. That's what they're trying to do, right?
You know, Tara, I totally agree with you. I believe that this is all provocatory behavior. I even believe that Greg Bovino knows full well that everything that's coming out of his mouth is a complete and total lie.
Of course he does.
He wants to go on national television and tell you not to believe your eyes and ears, not because he thinks that you're not going to believe your eyes and ears, but because he knows that it makes Americans angry. It makes them feel helpless. It makes them, mass protest. This is all being done to incite violence.
Yep.
So that the administration can go into these areas, declare martial law, and we won't have a 2026 election.
Absolutely.
There's not one single solitary Republican out there, maybe some of the, mad cultists, but there's no one that thinks that this behavior is going to win them an election in 2026 or ever. And so they're, in my mind, they cannot believe that they have to be operating in the understanding that there will not be any more elections in this country.
What else did Donald Trump say in 2020? He wanted to seize the voting machines, right?
Use the military to do it.
And use the military to do it. That is another aspect of this that I think is getting lost because of just the shock and awe and the horror of the immediate violence of what they're doing. But there is also, if you zoom out, the macro picture of this, to Michael's point, is that they are trying to lay the predicate to not have a midterm election in 26. Donald Trump has said it multiple times. Why we shouldn't even have to run against these people? Why should we even have to have a midterm election? Why can't they seize the voting machines? He has people that are embedded right now in the Department of Homeland Security who are working on this. People who were the election deniers in 2020, who were part of the election fake elector scheme, part of the whole thing that Jack Smith talked about, and that he felt that he had evidence that Donald Trump was involved in this, trying to overturn the election in 2020. Those people are now being, again, paid for by our tax dollars. They are political appointees inside the Department of Homeland Security, actively working on the elections in 2020 and how to have them, not have them, rig them. So this is all happening. I think we have to remind ourselves what the bigger picture is here, which is why we have to remain diligent on this, which is why we have to demand that members of Congress stay diligent on this, the people who actually have the power to do something about this. This is no time for games. No time for games. We've got to call it straight. And these conversations like we're having now, Don, thank you for doing this. And for the 22,000 plus people who are watching this right now, the more knowledge we have, the more we can hold those people accountable, and the more we can bring light to what the big picture is and not get distracted with the bullshit that this administration is trying to put out there, because that's what it's all about. It's all about Donald Trump trying to seize power and trying to turn this country into some fascist, authoritarian, dystopian state where we don't believe our lying eyes, and we can't allow that to happen. My shirt today says the road to fascism is paved with people that told you to stop overreacting. We are not overreacting at all. We're calling it straight, and we need to make sure that people are held accountable and that we do, we are the first line of defense, folks.
You scared me because I thought you were going to keep going with that shirt. I was like, whoa!
Tom, this is in New Orleans on New Year's Eve.
My mom was like, whoa! Because I know the girls are there. The girls are there. Let me just tell you. Anyways.
No, it's Sunday, Don. It's Sunday.
Let me just say this too. And I appreciate you guys. When you said that 22,000 people watching us now, because there were more earlier, that's like the demo of a cable show. You know what I mean?
Yes, it is.
Which is surprising. Like, hello.
This is why I brought it up, Don. I wanted people to understand that what you're doing and what people like us are doing in this independent space is we are the future here. More people are watching what we're doing right now than legacy media, because unfortunately they're not meeting the moment. A lot of them are not meeting the moment. There are pockets, but a lot of the overall. They're not.
But reminding people of also is like what a real president would do. And this is a statement from President Barack Obama and the First Lady, Michelle Obama. The killing of Alex Peretti is heartbreaking tragedy. It should also be a wake-up call to every American, regardless of party, that many of our core values as a nation are increasingly under assault. Federal law enforcement and immigration agents have a tough job, but Americans expect them to carry out their duties in a lawful, accountable way and to work with rather than against state and local officials to ensure public safety. That's not what we're seeing in Minnesota. In fact, we're seeing the opposite. And then it goes on to, and that is how a president should respond, and not something on Truth Social and the Tim Walz and the governor there, awful, blah, blah, blah. It's just, you guys
Where's George W. Bush, by the way? George W. Bush should come out and make a similar statement. All living presidents should be making a similar statement. I know probably President Biden feels as though he doesn't want to inject himself into this because of, all of the vitriol and all of that. But, all the things, which is unfortunate, because I'm sure that he is as horrified as the rest of us are. But the politics of the situation are probably why. But George W. Bush, where are you, Mr. Texan? Mr. Second Amendment, and he's a good and decent guy. Like, how about you grow a pair and say something? Come on, say something.
Thank you, guys.
This isn't partisan.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Okay, keep doing the Lord's work, Michael Fanone. We were all with you. Bullshit. Or whatever at that hearing on Friday. I was like,
I think it was.
I was like, attaboy, that's my Mike. What did you say, Mike?
I told Troy Nels to go fuck himself.
That was it. Yes. This Jersey girl could not be more proud of you doing that in that moment, because that would be a Jersey thing that we would have done 100%. Good for you.
Hey, Mike, Black Power. All right, wait, everybody up at the same time. There we go. Come on now. Woo! And look, he's even got the tats on his thing, on his fingers. All right, guys, thank you. Love you all. I appreciate you. Okay.
Thank you, Don.
Have a great day.
Thanks, Don. Bye, guys.
Good to see everybody.
Bye. Thanks, everybody, for watching. I just want to remind you guys before we get out of here to, if you want to get more information about us, here's what you can do. We have the Lemon Media Network, or it's LMN, which is the name of the company, LMN, which is Lemon Media Network. And if you would like to get more information, this is on our Instagram. You can subscribe to the Lemon Media Network, okay? So here's what you can do. Follow my new production page. This is my production company. It's called Lemon Media Network, DLM Media Network, okay? LMN. But anyway, here's where you go to follow it. Follow my new production page at DL Media Network, DL Media Network, DL Media Network. Okay. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And it's important that you do what you can, whatever it is that you can. I can't tell you what to do. It's certainly tough out there, especially when people are getting killed, and they are out there protesting. It is a sad state of affairs that we're in right now. So as I tell you, I'm gonna, and be safe if you're in the middle of a snowstorm or wherever you are. Hunker down, be safe. Everybody keep your head on a swivel, pay attention, stay woke. The real meaning of woke is to know what's going on around you. And hey, everybody, let's all, a prayer for everyone. I receive it and I'm sending to you all as well, okay? So be informed without being inundated until I see you back here tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern time, here on the Don Lemon Show on the Don Lemon channel for hot topics. Turn the TV off. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Your support means the world to us. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a show. We're live every weekday at 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern time with new clips dropping at 2 p. and 8 p. And if you want even more Don Lemon Show content, join the Lemon community. Members get exclusive posts, behind the scenes videos, and live chats just for you. So hit the join button or visit our channel page to sign up. Thanks again for all your love and your support, and I'll see you next time.